The first time I remember seeing him have what we knew later to be a seizure, he was running around the living room like he was hyper and had had too much chocolate. He was literally like, ee! And I looked at my daughter and I said, "Did you give him too much candy?" And she's like, "No, I didn't." And so we saw a couple that day. And I thought, if this happens tomorrow, I think I'm calling the doctor on Monday because it just looks a little strange and a little different. And then we woke up on Sunday and he had 25. In the next 10 days at Texas Children's, he had more than 250 seizures total. I was exhausted. The doctors came in the next morning. They're like, "Well, we've done a spinal tap. We've done this, we've done that. We don't really know what's going on with him." And I said, "Look, I don't care. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's cancer. I don't care what it is. My faith in God is strong. But you have to figure out what we're dealing with. This not knowing is not going to work. So go back and figure it out." And they went frame by frame back through his MRI and found a spot in the brain called a cortical dysplasia, which was fancy for there were cells in the brain that didn't develop the right way when he was in the womb. The prognosis that they gave us, they said there's some medication that we can try, and you guys may be looking at brain surgery down the road. And this was when he was 4. They started him on this medication and it worked for about a year and a half. He was sitting on my lap. We were looking at some pictures on the computer, and I felt him do this. I knew what it meant. I knew that he was probably headed to brain surgery. God was so evident in every part of his surgery, but just because he was seizure-free didn't mean that our struggles were over. He wasn't sleeping at night for months. 2 days after Christmas, we're sitting in church, and he looks at me and he says, "Mommy, I need help." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Last night while you were asleep, I almost took a whole bottle of pills. I don't want to be here." Everything fell apart all over again. You know, like it was like, okay, God, I know you brought him this far, but now what do we do? The first thing I did was I looked at him and I said, "I love you and we're gonna get help, okay?" And he was in the hospital for 5 days. It was a very scary time. And again, you know, God's like, "Hey, trust me. Don't forget the words I told you." And I found out about a treatment that I knew as soon as I read about it was gonna be the thing that would help him. And I started checking into it, and the only place to get it in Texas was in El Paso. And it was not going to be covered by insurance, and it was $8,000. I couldn't get him there. There was no way I could get him there. I couldn't figure out how I could make that work. It felt like God was saying, "Okay, here's this thing, but it's not quite your time." I was angry. Angry that I was the mom and I still couldn't fix it. It wasn't mine to fix. It was God's. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was talking to another coworker at work one day, and he looked at me and he goes, "You know, we have a fund that helps employees that need it, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." The treatment that I knew was going to help my son, that we were gonna have to travel for, and seemed impossible at the time, I literally was not one dime out of pocket. And not only that, we didn't have to go to El Paso. It was here in the Woodlands. It was 15 minutes from our house. And we started treatment and saw like immediate change. And one of the biggest things was Jacob's confidence. Like we just started noticing that he would walk up to people and look them in the eye and shake their hand. And he would never do that before because he never believed in himself. At the same time was finding community here at Church Project. And Calvin and I had a conversation, and Calvin's like, "Look," he goes, "he's here to be known by God, and we're gonna make sure that happens, and I'm gonna support you in that." Our house church was praying for him and surrounding us and loving us and all those things. And over the summer, he left the country for a week and went to Belize. You know, sometimes the answer is not yet. But when the answer is yes, yeah, God's in the middle of it, and there's nothing that's gonna stop it.